G'day mate and welcome back to the Friday Facts 266 Cleanup and Mechanics with me, JD, and I've also got Mojo here with me.
Hello.
So this one's like more to do with the whole game as a whole, more polishing essentially.
Yeah,
And
it's actually realistically, it's just a tiny few little things, and oh boy, has it caused a stir.
it's not nearly as bad as Bots vs Belts. That would be horrible.
Oh yeah, there's at least that consolidation.
Yeah. So look, we're going to skip over reading most of it. It's big. It's on the screen. You should be able to read it. Link down in the description if you can't. Um, the changes they're basically covering is they're just trying to streamline the game for new players.
That word's come up a lot. Streamline.
It has in the last couple of Friday Facts, and
Yes.
I agree it's a good idea. It is removing a lot of the things we've struggled with for a number of years now that have sort of ingrained themselves into the mechanics of the game that people are now, I don't know, upset that they're being taken away.
I think it's the familiar for particularly like the first one, the pickaxe removal or the mining tool removal.
Yeah.
It's something that's so ingrained that familiarity is upsetting most people.
But I can also understand why they're doing it when you're looking at the image, because a lot of new players would try to pick it up Minecraft style and hack at the ground, when realistically you just walk over and hack at the ground and the game hands all the other magic for you.
Yeah. Which is something that I like. Getting away from the Minecraft mentality is a really good thing.
Well,
I actually had an example when this first came up. I've said this several times now. There's a game called Starbound,
mm-hmm.
and they gave you your first mining tool was this high-tech matter manipulator, and you then used that to mine your basic resources to then craft pickaxes, which made 0 sense.
0 cents.
Like, why not just upgrade your matter manipulator instead? You know, your spacey thing. You come on a spaceship to craft a low-tech pickaxe.
Yeah. That's
The same, and I see the same sort of parallel here.
Well, I never remember the wooden or the stone pickaxe to make an iron pickaxe. That's before my time. I have seen mods that have added it back in. But yeah, that sounds horrible to me. Having to craft a wooden pickaxe to then make a stone pickaxe to make an iron pickaxe to make a steel pickaxe. And the worst thing about all of this is, even now as an experienced player late game, I die and I go pick up my body and I don't get to my body in time, or I decide I can't be bothered and I just pick up a whole new lot of armor and I forget to pick up a pickaxe because it's one of those things that you just automatically assume you have.
Yeah.
Either that, or or you're out in the middle of nowhere and it breaks on you. That's probably the most annoying thing ever. You're outposting, you're miles from base, and your pickaxe breaks because you crafted 10 and then you've slowly used them all. You don't pay any attention. You get down to 1, last one breaks, and you're like, crap.
It might take you a month to get through those 10 as well.
It definitely could. By the same token, depending on how busy you are, like we just did the Diggity map with Colonel Will, and in 6 hours, the whole team went through 300 something pickaxes, because it's just there's lots of hand mining in that one.
Yeah,
they're all steel pickaxes. So yeah, right.
the interesting thing too, I was just trying to think. So, as far as like, if you were to look at it in terms of player progression, currently no mods. You're 50% of the way through the tree in 4 seconds of gameplay.
To craft the iron pickaxe.
Yep, as soon as you craft that iron, you go from no pickaxe, slowest mining speed, to iron pickaxe, now 50% of the way through the tree, and then anywhere between 6 minutes to, I don't know, 20 minutes for most of us. We now have a steel axe.
Yeah.
And probably 10 of them.
Yeah,
because that's what we do.
Yeah, dead set. You get it's one of those early researches you knock off. Logistics, automation, blah 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 blah. It's like the third or the fourth research most people knock off nowadays, because
an
iron pickaxe at the end of the day it feels slow, and a steel pickaxe is it's so close. It's so easy to grab, as long as it remains red sights. And let's be honest, steel is one of those things that you don't actually need in the red science era of the game. You don't
Yeah.
really need it till green science, blue science, somewhere in that sort of vicinity is when you start needing to look at steel, because you don't actually need it to what, purple science? For engine
You
units.
need it for oil to unlock
Oh, of course,
blue
blue.
science or science pack 3.
Yeah.
So that's when your steel kicks in.
So if it's still red science for steel, because what they're actually doing is they're saying, look, we'll start you off with the equivalent of a invisible iron pickaxe. And then when you research steel, you'll just magically get the steel pickaxe speed. You don't have to craft it ever. You don't have to carry it with you. You'll just permanently have one, in your back pocket as part of your engineer's costume, which
Yes.
I love the idea of.
Oh, yeah. So I was going to say, so the way it works, as I understand it, is so your base mining speed is going to be bumped up to iron pickaxe speed.
Yep.
And then you do a research, which then unlocks a character mining speed bonus.
Yes.
Which is so there's this huge number of player modifiers within the game, and so this is actually making use of an unused feature that's been there for God knows how many versions now.
Yeah, the features have been there, but the base game just doesn't use them. Lots of mods do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the base game it's added it there to use it later or to let modders have fun with it. Which is one of the things we all love about Factorio, that they add so much to the base game so modders can play with it. There is a chance they might use it at some stage, but they've got no plan to do it tomorrow, so, it's there if they want it, but 9 times out of 10, it's purely for the modders.
It's like, I was going to say, another example is your toolbar. When you research that, you get toolbar count +1.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually see that in bonuses. It's quick bar count of 2.
Yep. By the same token, you can also... Again, there's other mods that give you 3 toolbars, 4 toolbars. All right.
And suddenly your screen's full of toolbars.
Yes.
But that's beside the point.
So yeah, the other big change is burner efficiency streamlining.
Yes.
So this is a big game changer. There's currently 3 types of fuel, I guess, in the game. Burner, electricity, and heat. And we all know about the good old burner and soda, and we all know how electricity works, and heat only really comes in when you get to nuclear.
Yeah, I think that's the only place where it applies from memory.
And they've got some maths in here, right? How many boilers can be continuously fed from a single yellow belt of coal? I actually thought it was 20. And then I was corrected probably about 2 weeks ago, and it said, no, it's actually 30. And I'm like, okay. And then had to go test it. And yeah, sure enough, it is 29.5, I think is the exact maths. But yeah, basically what they want to do is they want to remove the efficiency count on boilers and everything else.
Yeah, so everything that has some kind of efficiency ratio, and just get rid of it entirely.
And then to counteract that, they're going to halve the fuel value of everything.
Yeah.
Which has brought up a couple of concerns. So coal goes from 8 megajoules down to 4 megajoules, which is fine. Wood goes from 4 to 2. So it's raw wood goes from 4 to 2. Wood, which is basically only an intermediary for shotguns and wooden boxes, goes from 2 to 1. So we're fine there. But it comes down to other things like nuclear fuel. Nuclear fuel is intentionally 1.21 gigajoules worth of power.
Annoyingly.
As an inside joke. Is that going to halve, or are they going to leave that where it is?
I'm not entirely sure.
That's one of the things I'm really, really curious about, because, if it halves, that internal joke is now mute, essentially.
Admittedly, it's a really stupid joke. I'm so tired of that joke. Everyone makes that joke twice a day.
It is, but then again, it's homage to the past, so to speak. They only would have been better if they brought out if they brought out nuclear fuel last year on what was it, October 25th or whatever it is, or last year or the year before, on Back to the Future Day that was printed.
Was that like 2015?
Maybe it was. I don't know. I got a Facebook memory notification about it like a couple of days ago, so I know it was recent. It could have been several years ago recent, but month and day wise, it was recent.
Because it was 1985. It was 1985, and then it went back to 1955, and then 2015. Because it was
2015.
like
There you go.
30 years back, 30 years forward, or something like that.
Something like that. Something like that. All right. It would now mean that in theory, nuclear fuel would have more fuel than a stack of rocket fuel, wouldn't it? If they halved rocket fuel but kept nuclear fuel where it was. Which, again, like I'd be all for that because it actually gives a point to having nuclear fuel. Because we didn't realise, but I didn't realise at least until I did the Race to the Edge map, that a stack of rocket fuel actually has a higher fuel value by quite a lot than a single piece of nuclear fuel.
Yeah, it's something like 11 hours of runtime for rocket fuel versus 6 hours of rocket runtime for nuclear fuel.
It's rocket fuel is 225 megajoules and a stack of 10, so that's 2.25 gigajoules, whereas nuclear fuel is 1.21 gigajoules. So it's almost half. And then same applies down. If you go down to a stack of solid fuel, it's again more fuel than a stack of rocket fuel. So there's a loss.
Yeah.
Solid fuel is technically, if you want to get as far as possible, technically the best.
So I was going to say, there was one thing that wasn't clear from the FFF, which has since been cleared up, and that is that what happens to furnaces and burner inserters. Because technically they are now consuming at twice the rate, because if they aren't changed, they're still consuming at the same rate, but half as much. But the fuel value is half, so they're going to consume too much.
They already had 100% efficiency, yes. So
yeah, they don't. I don't think they actually had an efficiency factor or effectivity factor. I think it's called in the game for some reason.
They had 100% efficiency to start with. Boilers were the main thing that have a 50% efficiency. Like cars have 60, tanks have 75, trains have 100. So do furnaces. Furnaces also have 100. So what's been the outcome? Because I haven't seen anything about it.
It's since been clarified that furnaces and inserters have been rebalanced as well to correct it. Same with cars and tanks. Okay. And the only change out of it is that trains will now consume more. I don't have the thing in front of me. And the reason for that was that basically, as it stands, you put fuel in a train, and then it just goes for hours and hours and hours. Yeah. Like you have to actually think about fueling it now.
Look, I've done the same. I've set up a temporary train line and thrown fuel in the train, then forgotten about it. And 4 hours later, I'm like, oh, why is the trains not working? Oh, that one that I fueled manually is finally ran out of fuel. And then I do the logical thing. I run over there and manually put fuel in it and still forget to automate fuel delivery. And 4 hours later passes. And the exact same thing happens because, let's be honest, 4 hours is normally long enough for a lot of temporary builds, even though we all know with Factorio a temporary build normally
There's
starts
no such thing as
game
temporary.
and gets you to the end game. Yeah. And the last thing they're talking about changing is hardness, mining power, mining speed, and mining time streamlining.
Oh, yes. So this is something that I've always hated, is this whole mining hardness, mining power thing. It's a really convoluted calculation.
I hate it.
Doesn't need to be there.
It doesn't make sense, and that's the bottom line. It doesn't make sense, so I've never learnt it. All right?
Unless you're bobbing about who's really pissed off that it's gone. He wants it complicated for God knows what reason.
Either wants it complicated or wants to have the ability to add it back in. And the ability to add it back in, I'm fine for stuff like Bob's mods. I've seen a lot of complaints of, have you actually removed the whole pickaxe off the toolbar? It's gone, the code's gone, or have you just removed the core game accessing that part? Because, or the core game using that part? Because, again, he wants to add in multiple pickaxes, which...
For God knows what reason. We already elaborated on how you just have the mining. Like there's no difference between crafting 10 pickaxes and just having the mining, the mining character mining speed bonus.
Yeah, look, it's the same as the boilers. The boilers, I know Bob's mods have a 60%, a 70%, an 80% efficiency boiler, which is great. But if it's not in the base game, does it matter? Just rather than having efficiency tag, can't you just change, make an entity that uses fuel less fast?
Or maybe do something a little bit more creative than just a boiler 1, a boiler 2, a boiler 3, a boiler 4, a boiler 5, and so on.
So, the way mining drills worked, which again I had no idea until I actually read through the maths. So the hardness of iron ore, 0.9, is subtracted from the mining power of the drill, 3, to get an adjusted mining power of 2.1. This is multiplied by the mining speed of the mining drill, 0.5, to get the adjusted mining speed of 1.05. Since the mining time of iron ore is 2, divide by 1.05 by 2 to get 0.525 ores mined per second. Which is...
simple, isn't it?
Oh, gosh!
So, out of that, did you even know that stone was easier to mine than iron,
Yes.
Copper, and coal? And that uranium is more difficult to mine?
I know stone is easier because it has a lower hardness, but I had no idea about uranium because I've never had to mine, or I can't mine uranium by hand. Right? But I know stone is faster because we do that early stage.
That's true, actually. You can only mine it by a electric mining drill, so there's no way of telling there's a difference.
Look, I know when I'm going and mining stone, it's faster than when I'm mining iron by hand in the early game. But at the end of the day, no, I didn't care. I didn't care. None of this stuff has ever helped or done anything for me, or it's just made knowing this bit of maths go from a not even an average Factorio level player. It's gone from going expert Factorio level player to a Zuri level player. Yeah. Zuri would understand all this and be able to spit it back out. I got no hope.
Should also note in the third picture, the uranium ore, it says mining time 200%. So instead of having this convoluted calculation, it's now just a single value. Yes. So it's not all of the different values are not being wiped completely. It's just being considerably simplified.
Well, the way they've done it is like hardness was supposed to be something like armor of mining, which
that's what Gavrek stated as.
Makes sense. So they're getting rid of the whole hardness, mining power, everything's being removed, and it's just mining speed. A burner mining drill 0.25, a mining electric mining drill 0.5. Again, I'd like to simplify it again and just go electric mining drill, mining speed 1. Burner mining drill 0.5. Just like double the values of the drills and halve the speed it comes out of the ground, so all the mass still stays equal. But it means like you can straight away see that a burner miner is half as good as an electric miner drill, whereas I know people do not work well in quarters and halves, right?
And it doesn't affect modders, the modded ores, like super difficult ores, like the Bob's, as far as I can tell for the Bob's Angels, because the mining time is still there, and the mining categories, which is how uranium changes the type of machine works, is still there. So you can enforce specific mining drills to work with specific ores.
And then
so so there's no change there.
Yep. And then, so after we've changed our pickaxe, it's gone. Our fuel has changed. Our mining speed has changed. We're now getting rid of resistances, which haven't been
not
seen
entirely getting rid of, but
they haven't been shown
that word
since
streamlining.
14. So in 14, we removed the fact that they sat on the side bar of the game, taking up space that nobody ever used. Pretty much.
The thing is, how many people even understand what any of these resistances do?
I looked it up once, and again, I found out their maths was convoluted, and gave up. It was like, if something did 100 fire damage and you had a resistance of 30%, it didn't take 30% off the 100, it subtracted 3 or something. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that doesn't make sense. Even from like the age-old Dungeons and Dragons dice games that have been around for 40 years now, they had a simple like 30% means you just take 30% off the damage, and that's your final damage. Right? If you've got a second armor type that it applies to, you take a percentage off what's left. But the way they implemented it didn't make any sense. So again, they're streamlining it. And again, we haven't seen it for a whole version now, so almost 12 months. I don't think anybody cares. In fact, I didn't see one single comment in Reddit or the forums about the resistance streamlining at all. Nobody cared.
The only person who cared, again, was bobbing about, because his Bob's Warfare needed at least 8 different types of resistances, which is, I genuinely cannot understand why you even bother.
Oh, look, I've seen Natural Enemies Evolved, or is another mod that adds spiders that spit acid and spit poison and do all sorts of things. And Having those things there is nice for a mod, but for the base game, nobody cares. That's really what it comes down to.
The other thing is, what's the difference between physical and impact? Like, if you were to just to fire it off the top of your head, what? Just think about the wording: physical and impact.
Physical is when somebody comes and bludgeons me over the back of a head with a pickaxe that now doesn't exist. Impact is where somebody shoots me with a pistol.
Or is physical when you're being shot, or an impact is when you're being hit with something heavy.
Like an artillery or a brick.
Yeah. Or a brick, yeah.
Yep.
And then there's, what's the difference between laser and electric?
Electric is a Tesla tower, which I have not seen a good version of since Command & Conquer. And lasers are the things that are in the game that go pew pew and don't shoot solid beams of laser until version 17.
Instead, they just shoot little dashes which home in on stuff.
Yeah, they home in and turn corners. Let's not get into the technicalities of... Yeah.
Did you know personal laser defense is electric type, not laser type?
That probably explains why you can't upgrade it when you do the researches. Which, again, doesn't make sense because it needs lasers to build the item. Yeah.
The more you think about the resistances, the more you just cringe.
You dig into the game, the more you see that somebody made this part and then somebody else came and tacked that part which like relied on something else that was already there, but then to change their mind about how things work. Which is down to not having a set rule set, which I understand. It's been in beta, it's been in alpha. This is how games are built, and Woober's done a really, really good job. Don't get me wrong, and it's why we come to this finishing stage where we polish it all off and make sure it all makes sense.
Probably the final thought on the resistances is name a game which has that many resistances or resistance types in it. Diablo?
Yep, Diablo.
How many does that have?
At least 6 that I can think of.
So I don't remember that many. There's like fire.
It's fire. There's water, fire, magic outright. I think, electric and poison, or something along those lines. There's the 4 main resistances. Plus, you've got a 5th one, which is an overall damage buff. And then I think there's a 6th one that only bosses can use, but players can't. Right? So there's maybe 6.
And see, I can't even remember them because most of them are so inconsequential.
Yeah, pretty much. It's one of those things that it only matters in mid-game. After, and when you're playing Diablo 3, it matters in mid-game when you need more fire resistance or you need more electrical resistance. By the time you get to end game and super end game, same story. Your resistances are like, they're 1,000% or something, which again, it doesn't make sense how they do their resistances, but we're just going to leave that one there. That's a whole separate game. And it's an end game thing that you just don't care about.
Yeah. I mean, in the context of Factorio, well, no matter what the resistances are, you just blueprint down laser turrets and they obliterate everything. Or your long-range artillery bomb.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, add more of it. Pretty much, we both did the GM8 challenge where we had the Bitezillas and bullets bounced. We found flamethrowers work wonders, so we just put down more flamethrowers, and we had rows and rows of flamethrowers, which kept giant 200,000 hit point Bitezillas. They died real quick with lots of fire. All right, if all else fails, just double it, and away you go.
So moving on, assembly machine ingredient removal. This is a controversial one.
This is blown up Reddit, forums, everything, Discord. So what they're actually basically doing is, early game as it is, you get your grey assembly, your level 1. And then you have to get to level 2, and it always slows down everybody. You have to get that tech unlocked to make green sights. And
or to automate anything, because you can only really automate transport belt gears and circuits with assembly machine 1. You can't really do that much with it.
Yeah, but it's not quite useless, but it's very, very close to.
Yeah.
Because assembly machine 1's 2 recipes, assembly machine 3
2 items minimum, assembly machine 2 is 4, and then 6 or 8 for 3.
It was 5. I think it was up to 6 because some recipe changed, and then I know Lord Couture had to mod it for 7 and above for his SpaceX mod.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, it's some limit like that where it's 2 items, 4 items, and 6 items for the 3 different levels of assembly machine. So they're removing that.
Yep. And what that means is you can happily craft your rocket silos and oil refineries and such in the assembly machine one.
Yeah, which is going to make the lazy bastard that much easier.
On top of not having to do those 2 crafts for the pickaxe.
Yes. On top of that, it's also going to mean that going from Science Pack 1 to Science Pack 2 is going to be that much faster.
Yeah.
So,
and it means you're not waiting on assembly machine 2. You're not waiting for that leapfrog.
Assembly machine 2s aren't that much more efficient. We go from a crafting speed of 0.5 to 0.75, and I've actually got Factorio running, so I've got 2 here. So we've got 0.5 to 0.75 for a 3 kilowatt drain compared to a 4 kilowatt drain, 5 kilowatt drain when they're idle, and a 90 kilowatts to 150 kilowatts. So they're 50% faster, but I use a lot more power when they're running and a little bit more when they're idle.
And realistically, power is inconsequential.
Power is consequential. Look, Assembly Machine 2 does do less pollution than Machine Number 1, but I can see...
Which is also inconsequential pollution.
It is. Well, let's be honest, every map that we've played through on 16 has been a desert map, so... we've all got used to pollution and biters and all that sort of stuff. But it means you can have a lot more bases that start off with Assembly Machine 1 and just stay there for a very, very long time. The only thing... So there's 2 things we found out.
We should go through what the limitations of an Assembly Machine 1 are, because it turns out that a lot of people don't actually know what they are, apart from the modules and the crafting limit, item limit.
So, yeah, Machine 1 can't do modules. Machine 2 can do modules. In the new update, and also in the existing update, Machine 1 can't do anything with liquids.
Yeah, you can't do anything with fluids.
So, even though lubricant barrels is a 2-item recipe, which means
you can't do any barreling.
Well, you can make barrels. That counts, right?
Oh, yeah, you can make barrels, but you can't fill barrels or empty barrels. You can't make blue circuits. You can't make electric engines. And for some reason, you can't make regular engines.
Yeah, I don't get
that. Was something that I was trying to figure out, and I'm still not sure on.
I don't get why we can't make engines either. I understand why we can't barrel stuff, because we've got nowhere to shove the liquid pipe. I'm not going there with that joke. But yeah, I think we should be able to do engine units, because it lets you get up to car and tank and train that much easier. But yeah, so it means the Assembly Machine 1 will be able to do everything except electric engine, the different type of ballering, which again you don't need.
Basically, you will use Assembly Machine 1s until you get to needing to blue science, because you need it for engines.
Well, in theory, if engines get changed to Assembly Machine 1...
I don't see that changing.
Well, I think they should. But it means your Assembly Machine 2, for sure, will come in with electric engines and with processing units. And essentially, they're the only 2 things you need to get to a rocket.
Which is how it was originally, too, because you didn't need Assembly Machine 3s to get to a rocket.
No, now you only need them for a satellite, but everybody just handcrafts those. Most speedrunners don't even bother doing the research for Assembly Machine 3.
Assembly Machine 3s are basically an endgame item for mega basing.
Yeah, they are.
Like beacons.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Beacons. And I didn't know this. Yes. I've got a speed beacon down here, and we can see the Assembly Machine 2 has a crafting speed of 1.125, because it's got a 50% boost from the beacon. The Assembly Machine 1 has a crafting speed of 0.5 still, because it's not actually affected by beacons, and I had no idea.
Yep, so this is the same as the burner mining drill beacon thing, so you can't influence it with a beacon.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, I didn't know that either, but then, who's putting down burner mining drills with a beacon? Yeah, that's a silly thing. A very, very silly thing. So, the other thing was fuel. So, yeah, fuel is... They've said they're going to rebalance it, but we've got a car and a tank having the 60%, the 75%, and the train being 100% efficient, but they said they're going to rebalance those. They
Yeah,
rebalance car and tank, but they're going to leave train nerfed.
Yeah, so trains consume more. Everything else, their fuel consumption's been adjusted.
Well, there you go. I don't know. I think it's a good direction. I'm looking forward to these changes. I'm really looking forward to when I die, not forgetting to leave the base with a steel pickaxe, because that's frustrating.
Yeah, realistically, all these changes are fairly, apart from the assembly machine one, the rest of them are pretty inconsequential for most players.
They are. And
they're just getting rid of little annoyances.
Assembly machine one, I like the idea of, because it means that red-green science is going to be that much faster. And it also means that Factorio bases as a whole, right, for those that are just launch the rocket, are you going to see a lot more grey, dirty-looking bases, because people never bother getting an assembly machine 2. Or never bother, putting them down in mass, because they cost a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Than a regular assembly machine.
They cost 2 assembly machine 1s.
Well, 22 and a half, basically double.
Because you got to craft the assembly machine 1, and then you got to take the assembly machine 1, add the same ingredients to it to make 2.
Oh, it is that. Okay, because they keep changing the recipes for assembly machine 2. But no, they changed it from 15 to 16, didn't they?
I can't remember now. I don't recall it changing as such. Because assembly machine 3 needs 2 assembly machine 2s and then speed modules.
Really expensive. I've got the costs up because I've got a game up with Creative Mode. Yeah, it's 22 iron and 4.5 copper for 1, and 44 iron and 9 copper for assembly machine 2. Why would you bother? I think that's the bottom line. If you don't need assembly machine 2s, apart from blue circuits and for electric engines, and maybe possibly standard engines, why would you bother?
Yeah.
If you're not going to a mega base, you're not going to end game, you're not going past end game, then assembly machine 1 it is.
Yeah, that's a good change, I say.
Yeah. So I think we're going to leave this here. I think we covered everything.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to the changes. You are too?
Yep, definitely.
And we'll see you guys next week with the next Friday Facts. Thanks for watching. Bye.
See ya.